Good day to all of you. We've got a great series of topics that we're going to talk about today, and it's primarily going to be about what you thought was your own invulnerability and how what you thought was invulnerability was really vulnerability. Alrighty, good day everybody. So, as you noticed, we decided to go with another intro here on this one. So, at least for the time being, I think I'm just going to kind of play around with intros. I think it's fun. I think it shakes things up a bit. And for me personally, I'm doing these early in the morning. And I don't know, kind of energizes me a bit. Shakes me up for the morning. You know what I mean? No, but I was going to say in all seriousness, but I don't know how serious this is going to be. So let's kind of recap what was said at the beginning. Now, I just basically ad-lib those. I put the intro on and I just say whatever comes to my head. I mean, I have a general idea. Like, for example, the only thing I really came sitting down in front of this mic with this morning was I wanted to discuss vulnerability. It's something I've been practicing myself lately, and I want to kind of give some background of my experience with the term itself. I can't tell you how many times over the past few decades, one of the things that I would hear from, it was always girlfriends, but that I needed to be more vulnerable. And I haven't dove into my past or anything in this cast, but I will allude to certain things about myself, and I like to share them because hopefully they'll be helpful for someone else who is experiencing something similar, or maybe you know someone else that could have experienced something similar to have a better understanding of them. But and like what I presume to be many people growing up in our society, thought of the idea of presenting myself as weak to the world or even to my own self was a big no-no, because I, again, probably like many, assumed that to really, bear your feelings to someone else, especially if it comes to something, like I'm afraid of this or I'm afraid of that. And that would be something that I would be hard pressed to say to other people. Now, I've always been pretty upfront with what I'm thinking with other people. And I thought for a long time I was upfront with what I was feeling, but you can't really be upfront and honest with someone else about your feelings if you are not even honest with yourself about them. And that's where I found a lot of difficulty was really being in touch with my own personal fears. I was, like I mentioned in the previous podcast, I was afraid of being afraid. So I was thinking about something interesting recently about vulnerability. So I'd had people, girlfriends primarily, saying that I need to be more vulnerable. I was in my head, I was like, you just want me to be weak. Why would you want me to be weak? And so I dove in, and I've been practicing an exercise lately in being more honest with myself and being more honest with those around me in what we would have termed, or most people would term, being vulnerable. I'll give you an example. So, and that's what I intend to do in this podcast, by the way. This podcast, like I said before, is not about me telling anybody what to do, or even sharing this information knowing that I know what somebody else needs to hear or what somebody else needs to do. I personally believe we're all of the same spirit. We're all connected to the same potential, and we are just kind of, Wayne Dyer said, we're not humans having a spiritual experience, or spiritual beings have a human one. So I'm not out to proclaim that anything that I think or feel or know trumps anything anybody else does. But we're all in this together, and I know there have been lots of things that other people have shared on a daily basis for me, in which I have something to learn. So I'm just kind of giving back in the best way that I can, at least that I know of it presently, and that is to share my experiences. So I'll be very upfront with you guys. And so I had a scenario recently. So for my job, I had fallen behind in my numbers and things, and this is, so what I'm bringing up here is a circumstance in which I was exercising the practicing of being upfront and honest with people, in which most people would assume was being vulnerable, but we're going to get to that and how I think it's actually the opposite. Well, let me just get through the experience first. So late at night, well, not late at night, but in the evening, my boss texted me. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to come out and I'm going to shadow you." And shadowing is basically when they come out and they watch you and they see all the things that you're doing, and they give you a critique, and they tell you areas that you could improve and things like that. And it kind of I felt some kind of way about it initially, and being much more in touch with my feelings, I was like, well, what is this feeling that I'm having? And I explored it. And at first, when I was thinking about him coming out of the shadow, I was thinking about, because like I said, my numbers had fallen behind. And there's reasons for it. I was making some changes to things and things like that. But from a prideful perspective, it wasn't comfortable for me to not be performing at what I considered would be my best. And now I was going to be in front of my boss, and what kind of conversation are we going to have? And I noticed that a lot of the thoughts that were coming into my head were excuses. And if you really look at the etymology of the word excuse, I mean, it basically means to remove one from responsibility. Excuses don't do anything for us besides take away our power to do something about the thing that we're so uncomfortable we decided to create an excuse for it. So long story short, I really sat with it, and by the time I met with him the next day, I had watched my thoughts, and we're going to get into watching your thoughts, and it's really amazing because in some sense of the word, they're your thoughts because you're still hanging on to them, hanging on to the beliefs that support those thoughts. But in another sense, the thoughts really aren't even yours. Anything that you could think could be thought of by anybody else. It's almost kind of pridefully ignorant of us to assume that this thought that I'm deciding to hang on to is my thought. I'm the only one who can possess this thought. And I've said it before in previous podcasts, anything that you think you possesses you. But for the sake of this podcast, I'm just going to stick with using terminology like my thoughts. But in reality, I would say that I don't identify with them to such a degree that I would actually consider them my thoughts. They're just thoughts that I'm presently hanging on to. And like I said yesterday, the tree, the tree is your belief system with its roots and all that, and then the branches are the thoughts that would be a thought that would come from that belief system. Sometimes belief systems are entire matrices, so you can have this big matrix of all of these experiences that really compounded this belief that you have in your garden of your mind, and you could have a feeling at this present moment, and it's just because of one of the offshoots of that belief matrix, branching out to a fruit of an emotion in that present moment based upon the external circumstances, and that fruit is that feeling. But anyways, I kind of digressed on that. But so long story short, I was watching the thought. I think that's probably, I'll do my best to try to word it like that, or maybe I'll switch between the two just to make it more comfortable for delivery here. But I was watching the thoughts, and there were a lot of excuses in those thoughts. I could ramble on and on and on about it, but I just want to get to the crux of this whole thing. And ultimately, I decided to just get to the root, like we were talking about. Yeah, get to the root. See, huh? It's all about plants and stuff. The garden. Get to the root of it. And when I met with him, I basically just came flat out and told him, look, the reason my performance has gone down is ultimately, I could say this or I could say that or I could say this or I could say that, but ultimately, the reason is it's twofold. One, my numbers have dropped because I feel or felt afraid because my numbers had dropped. I had made changes and they didn't come back up, and it confused me. And number two, I felt embarrassed because my numbers weren't at the top where I thought they should be. And regardless of what I say about this situation or that specific situation or that circumstance, ultimately those two factors are radiating out of me when I'm communicating with the people, and it's affecting everything overall. And presently, I'm not sure what changes need to be made. And so I asked him, I said, instead of shadowing me, can I shadow you? And the funny thing about that is, in my pride and arrogance prior to that, he had come out with me before to shadow me, and I thought, well, my numbers are really good. He can shadow me. No, sorry, he wanted me to, he offered for me to see what he had to do. He's been around for a long time. He's good at what he does. And I was like, oh, I got this. I just want you to watch me and let me know what you think. And so anyways, I said that. And I will tell you guys, it felt really, really good to do that. I've been doing that more and more lately, but that one for me was a pretty big one. And we had a really good talk, and I learned an incredible amount that I wouldn't have if I came into the forefront with excuses, that I wouldn't have had I not got to the root of the problem. And I'll tell you guys, the root of all the trees in our garden of negativity, they're always rooted in some fear. They could be, if you think about a tree, the way a tree grows, it actually grows kind of like the brain cells, right? And something happened when we were younger that created fear. It was this belief that I'm not good enough, or the world's not good enough, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, or whatever it was. And then that started to grow in our garden, and over time we would have more experiences that seemed to justify that. And so that tree grows, and it grows, and there are more branches, and there are more trees, and there are more fruit. And that's why you can have an emotion, a negative emotion, at one particular time and not be having it an hour later, because it's it's a matrix, and it's like almost like a code of, just a mathematical formula of a belief in internal and external circumstances and what your subconscious deems should be felt in that moment. It can be pretty intricate, but here's the beautiful part. A lot of psychology and a lot of counseling says chop off this branch and chop off that branch, or blame the outside, or blame this, or blame the past, or blah, blah, blah. But here's the deal. The root is always rooted in fear, something we're afraid of. And we cannot transcend anything that we do not face. And it's like magic, guys. I mean, I really, really implore you to try this and to be upfront with people and quote unquote, I'll explain why the quote's in a minute, be vulnerable with yourself and with others, and humble. I've been working on myself here for quite some time. I can, I provide counseling to people, and they seem to be very happy with that. Yet, I just share with you guys a circumstance of myself just literally last week, in which I had been hanging on to thoughts that were prideful, and some would say arrogant, and in a situation where I wasn't being completely upfront with myself. So this is a I mean, who knows if it's forever, but I'm going to assume that this is a game that we do for the rest of our lives. It's just being vigilant and watching our thoughts and things like that. So we're at 15 minutes. So I just wanted to share that the success I had where I had a feeling, it felt negative. I felt a fruit. And instead of going down the excuses or projection route, I decided to sit with it. And I said, I am feeling bad right now because I feel afraid that my numbers have dropped. Now, by the way, I just said, now, here's the beautiful thing. You start that chain, you start a dialogue with yourself. We're going to talk about how we are a holy trinity. I'll probably do it tomorrow. It's really, really cool stuff, guys. And I hopefully prove to you at least enough so that you believe it more than you don't believe it, that there's no way that you're just a single thing, that you are a trinity. I'll use Einstein quotes, I'll use some scripture and everything like that, and a bunch of other little cool things to show you guys that. I just lost my train of thought. Got it. So, so remember yesterday we talked about, we are a trinity. We'll get to that, but engage in dialogue with yourself. And when you feel something is happening outside of you, or you feel that there's something that you think may happen in the future, or whatever it is, you get a negative, quote unquote, yucky feeling, sit there and say the following statement. I feel whatever you think it is. I feel bad, I feel nervous, whatever it is, because I feel afraid of, and let yourself fill in the blanks. And the fascinating thing I'm having trouble with trying to explain this to you guys is that I haven't talked to you about the Trinity yet and how it works. So anyways, we'll just leave it at that for now. Engage in that dialogue and you'll be really fascinated to see what happens next. And when you're honest with yourself and you get to the root of the problem, then you can uproot the entire matrix. So if you've had like a pattern in your life where things kept repeating themselves over and over and over again, and maybe you didn't realize it at the time, it felt like it just these same things kind of happened to you, or maybe you didn't realize they were the same, but when you really start to dig deep, another interesting coin of phrase, you'll realize that it's all been based on this matrix, and you can get rid of the matrix, but you have to get to the root of the problem. It's some fear you have that was instilled when you were younger, and guess what? It's not true. And so I do want to finalize with what I've been hinting at the whole time about vulnerable. So interesting thing, people say, oh, you should be vulnerable, right? And they say, to most people, that to be vulnerable, they think means to be like what I was with my boss up front. Like I told him straight up, I feel afraid because I'm embarrassed. I feel afraid because my numbers have dropped and I don't know why, and I'm confused, right? That's what most people will consider to be vulnerable. But interestingly, the word vulnerable comes from the Latin word vulnus. Vulnus means wound. So you have able, so vulnerable, able, you are able to be wounded. So a lot of people would think that being upfront with somebody else and yourself and bearing the truth that you felt afraid of something, that is actually being vulnerable. But I would argue that it's being invulnerable, and in the prefix in that circumstance, the in will actually negate the following word. So invulnerable will mean not vulnerable, which will mean not able to be wounded. So I'm going to ask you something, right? If we are not even accepting or facing the truth of a feeling that we are presently holding on to, we are avoiding it, we are resisting it, we are hiding from it, we are running away from it, right? How are we treating that circumstance? As if it's something that cannot wound us or something that can. If you're avoiding something, it's because you're afraid that it can wound you, which would mean that by not being upfront with yourself and the present state of mind that you are in, or the present feelings, thoughts, and beliefs that you are hanging on to, means that you are being vulnerable. So being vulnerable is not being upfront with yourself and the present state of feelings that you're hanging on to. And being honest with yourself, getting to the root of the belief system that supports the thoughts and the feelings that you are presently I was going to say enjoying, I guess we'll just go with that one, that you are pleasantly enjoying, is true invulnerability. So I would encourage all of you guys to take what you can from what I had to say today, see if you can apply it to your own lives or your own experiences, and why not try being invulnerable? All right, adios, have a great day.